Thank you for joining our International Forum on Creating Peace through Agriculture in Afghanistan and lifting the power of women in that effort. This event was created in partnership with Women in War and International Politics from King's College London and the California-based nonprofit Roots of Peace. Please welcome our host, Charlotte Harwood.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining this panel discussion on building peace through agriculture in Afghanistan to mark UN Landmine Awareness Day. My name is Charlotte Harwood, and I am delighted to represent Women in War and International Politics as the host today. I'm currently a master's student in the Department of War Studies at King's College London, where I am studying conflict resolution in divided societies. I'm a junior editor and MA rep for Women in War and International Politics. King's College is a UK top 10 university, and within it, the Department of War Studies is one of the only academic departments in the world focused on understanding the complexities of conflict and post-conflict societies. Women in War and International Politics, or WIWIP for short, is a department-led and funded initiative in the Faculty of Social Science and Public Policy. It is a network of women students, staff, and alumni from King's College, as well as female practitioners working in the fields of war studies and international politics to showcase their work and achievements. We also encourage exploration of the question of gender and its implications in war, conflict, and security. In doing so, we aim to create lasting systemic change by uprooting the status quo to eliminate cultural, structural, and institutional barriers for anyone who identifies as a cis or trans woman or non-binary from thriving in the field of war studies and international politics. This event gives us the opportunity to look beyond the role of women in conflict itself, and instead focus on the unique challenges that face women and children following conflict. As those uniquely affected in the aftermath of war, it is necessary to include gendered considerations in post-conflict reconstruction, and so we are delighted that WIWIP has the opportunity to talk to those working towards this aim themselves. I'm honoured to be part of a group of women studying and researching war and playing my part in promoting its accessibility and importance to a wider audience. During my undergraduate studies in politics and international relations, I was taught predominantly by men. In my final year, I was lucky enough to have been taught by an amazing female researcher, and her passion for what she did was passed on to me, without a doubt setting me on the path I am on now. It's so important for people to see individuals like themselves doing something they're interested in for these roles to look attainable. As someone who's been lucky enough to be supported by many accomplished women and men, it is my hope that events like this today will show young women that their voice should be heard and that especially in post-conflict societies, they play a vital role. I was lucky enough to be introduced to Heidi Kuhn by a treasured family friend and was instantly amazed by her passion for her work in demining former war zones and rebuilding lives in these countries through sustainable agriculture. I'm delighted that we've been able to partner today to promote Roots of Peace's work in the UK and to launch her book, Breaking Ground. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our panel of accomplished women here today. For this Roots of Peace and WIWIP panel, we'll be joined by Heidi Kuhn, Fauzia Mazaye, Zalash Sarmast, and Mukadesa Yurish. We're also honoured that Cheryl Jennings, Emmy Award-winning journalist who's travelled extensively with Roots of Peace, will be moderating the event this evening. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand things over to Cheryl.
Charlotte, thank you so much for that very kind introduction and for creating this incredible opportunity for us to talk about cultivating sustainable peace in Afghanistan through agriculture. It's so important. We appreciate the time we have here with all of our guests from all around the world, and we want to showcase the crucial roles women are playing in moving Afghanistan forward. Now, Charlotte, you mentioned Roots of Peace and Heidi Kuhn. Well, I have followed the work of Roots of Peace for nearly 20 years, reporting on them with 2 trips to Afghanistan in 2005 and 2015. And I was able to document the early beginnings and then the later huge successes with agriculture and trading in Afghanistan. When I interviewed President Ashraf Ghani in 2015, he told me that Roots of Peace is a nation changer because the agricultural development and trade programs have become so successful. I'd like to show you a brief video I did back then showing some of the work being done by Roots of Peace.
A Bay Area nonprofit group is helping to transform the economy of Afghanistan tonight.
ABC 7 News anchor Cheryl Jennings had the exclusive opportunity to see their work firsthand, and she is here to tell us more about that.
It's all very exciting. President Ashraf Ghani says that he wants Afghanistan to be an exporting machine and believes the San Rafael-based charity Roots of Peace is helping to provide the tools to be a game changer for his country with the help of U.S. aid.
It's a reborn love. People are re-engaging with their country.
Afghanistan's new president, Ashraf Ghani, met recently with Roots of Peace founders Heidi and Gary Kuhn and me to talk about moving his country's economy from aid to trade.
I want to thank Roots of Peace for their initiatives, and I'll be very encouraging of scaling up the effort.
Roots of Peace is eager to expand its work with farmers and traders so they can stand on their own. I saw their pilot project in 2005 during my first visit to Afghanistan, when Roots of Peace was removing landmines and helping starving farmers grow food for their families. Now, thanks to long-term funding from U.S. aid, a major transformation is underway to improve the agricultural economy. The new president told me that it is crucial for the world to help Afghanistan create jobs, because jobs can be a powerful weapon to fight the drug trade and terrorism.
The image of a number of small drug runners is not the image of the majority of the people. It's the type of threats that have congregated around our neighborhood, or threats to the entire system of government.
In spite of those threats, Afghanistan is a country on the move finally after decades of war.
It's present-day Kabul at night, the 5th fastest growing city in the world. That's progress, that's success, and that could only happen with a coalition of the security that is provided.
General John Campbell leads the NATO mission in Afghanistan. He talked with me at the military base in Kabul about the important contributions by Roots of Peace.
Their dedication, their passion, their energy for the Afghan people is pretty remarkable.
Now, Roots of Peace clearly have shown that they're dedicated to development here, and they have some very impressive results.
Bill Hammock is head of the USAID mission in Afghanistan, the largest in the world.
They've been funding our programs and supporting our efforts. They've been a huge supporter of us, which is great. It's enabled us to do many good things in this country.
Hammock and his team met with the Kuhns in Afghanistan to talk about President Ghani's goal: drive the agricultural economy faster, link more farmers and more traders to international markets.
We've seen a shift now whereby farmers are actually making money, and there's a growing number of Afghan traders that are helping out.
The Roots of Peace team producing those impressive results includes experts in science and business.
We've gone from market demand to identifying the types of product that buyers want, and then working backwards and saying, this is a product that you should be growing, and this is how you should take care of that product.
Proper irrigation is important, thinning is important, fertilizer.
Ahmad Shah trains farmers on ways to grow the best grapes and pomegranates. He says it took time to convince the farmers to try new ideas.
They were fighting with us. Why you are disturbing our wines? This is from my mother, this is from my father.
We have taken farmers to international expositions, international markets, to meet with the buyers in those markets. They needed to understand the big picture.
We've gone from what are basically wholesale markets to directly selling to supermarket chains. Those aspects they would classify as being game-changing.
Millions of dollars of deals are starting to happen thanks to that partnership with USAID. And now President Ghani has jumped in and is already promoting Afghanistan's produce.
Without the sons and daughters of farmers believing that they can be presidents, ministers, entrepreneurs, we will not have a prosperous country.
So impressive. And the work has grown even more since I visited there. So let's get right to our first speaker, the founder and CEO of Roots of Peace, Heidi Kuhn, the author of the new book, Breaking Ground. Heidi, welcome.
Cheryl, thank you so much for this warm introduction. It is truly an honor to be invited by Charlotte and King's College London on the occasion of International Mine Awareness Week, along with our distinguished Afghan women leaders. Today, we live in a world where there are an estimated 60 million landmines silently poised in 60 countries. This is an example of an anti-personnel landmine. It remains buried in the ground long after the guns of war have been silenced. Afghanistan is the most heavily mined country in the world today. Yet conversely, it is a country which is 80% dependent upon agriculture for jobs. This is a paradox, as over 33,000 innocent Afghan footsteps have been killed by landmines during the past 2 decades, while farming their land or tending to their sheep. In 2001, Roots of Peace began raising funds for the removal of landmines in Afghanistan. Today, nearly 20 years later, we have planted over 5 million fruit trees in all 34 provinces, impacting over 1 million Afghan farmers and families. And furthermore, we are providing exports to new markets, bringing higher incomes and hopes to farmers and traders as we sow the economics of peace with our business model to demine, replant, and rebuild in Afghanistan. Let me take you back to where this all began. On September 21st, 1997, following the tragic death of the late Princess Diana of Wales and her friend Dodi Al-Fayed, Roots of Peace began with a vision of turning mines to vines, replacing the scourge of landmines with bountiful vineyards and orchards worldwide. This idea grew from the heart of the Napa Valley as business leaders supported the concept of growing fresh grapes and raisins on former war-torn lands, cultivating peace through agriculture. With a deep commitment to turn ideas into reality, I invited a select group of California vintners, Robert Mondavi, Tor Kenward of Behringer, and Eric Wente, to join me in Canada to witness the signing of the Ottawa Treaty to ban landmines in December 1997. Our footsteps transcended politics as we traveled as a California business leaders in a humanitarian effort, reflecting the plight of farmers who often sacrifice their lives to reap a harvest to feed their families on former war-torn lands. Following the 9/11 attacks on the United States, Diane Disney Miller, owner of Silverado Vineyards, generously donated $200,000 to Roots of Peace to begin our work to heal the wounds of war in Afghanistan by removing landmines. Her father was Walt Disney, who believed that dreams can come true if only we have the courage to pursue them. And so we partnered with the United Nations Mine Action Service, UNMAS, and contracted with the Halo Trust to remove landmines in the Shamali Plains located north of Kabul. Former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan strongly supported our efforts as civil society. Every penny went towards removing over 100,000 landmines and unexploded ordnance from the grape vineyards along the front line of the battle, which were once burned and mined by the Taliban to break the spirit of Afghan farmers and families. Once the land was no longer held hostage by landmines, Roots of Peace began our first program in 2003 in partnership with the United Nations Agency for International Development, USAID, and the University of California at Davis. Farmers immediately returned to cultivate their rich agricultural land and feed their families with a renewed spirit of hope. Our goal was to restore Afghanistan as the garden of Central Asia. Roots of Peace began by introducing the concept of trellis vineyards, which literally lifted the grapes up from the ground on wooden posts. Eventually, these evolved into cement posts for sustainability. Prior to our agricultural interventions, the grapes were grown on mounds and harvested at midday on burlap sacks, and then dragged to market in the hot sun to be sold for a meager profit. And Roots of Peace, the word began to spread among provinces, and Roots of Peace expanded beyond grapes and ultimately trained farmers to grow fresh fruits, nuts, and spices, transforming poppies into pomegranates and other high-value crops. Roots of Peace then introduced a new business model, which provided linkages to new markets with our USAID cold storage refrigeration centers, which were built and fresh fruits were harvested and packed professionally in corrugated boxes with sanitary conditions and prepared for sale in new markets. Roots of Peace pioneered the concept of bringing Afghan traders to global markets at Gulf Food in Dubai, the largest food exhibition in the world. Afghan traders also sold their high-value crops at exhibitions in Moscow, Istanbul, New Delhi, and Mumbai. Business deals were negotiated. The Afghan buyers fondly remembered the tales of the Kabuli wallahs who would annually bring the world's best fruit to market. Now, the Afghan traders were back. Through funding from USAID, Roots of Peace helped to increase the agricultural exports of the country from $250 million to over $1.4 billion. Since 2019, we have expanded our business model with an additional $45 million from the U.S. Department of State, Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation, and Livestock, MAIL. And we are creating alternative agricultural crops to poppies as we speak in the most remote provinces of Afghanistan. Roots of Peace is defining the economics of peace. And when the ink dries on the Inter-Afghan Peace Treaty, we are poised to bring even more shovels, not guns, to the most remote provinces, providing jobs for men, women, and young people. We remain optimistic for the peace talks in Istanbul, Turkey, and trust that the negotiations may include creating sustainable peace through agriculture. Female farmers and exporters are integrated into every aspect of our programming in Afghanistan. I've sat proudly with these brave Afghan women and their families and tasted the juicy nectar of the fruit that is grown on former minefields in the Shamali Plains. 2 decades later, we have truly transformed mines to vines in Afghanistan. And inshallah, this is only the beginning. And now, Cheryl, back to you to introduce these amazing young Afghan women leaders on our panel who envision a better future for their country.
And Heidi, thank you, and Roots of Peace for doing your part to help lift the country. It's just amazing. Our next distinguished speaker is Muqaddesa Yurish. She is the country director for Lapis, which is a top strategic communication firm of Moby Group. She's also an adjunct lecturer for the American University of Afghanistan. She's a former deputy minister for commerce and industry of Afghanistan. She was born and raised in Kabul, and she is a powerful voice for her generation. Muqaddesa, thank you for being with us all the way live from Kabul. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hello, a very warm greetings to everyone from Kabul. Thank you, Cheryl, for that introduction. I'd like to thank Roots of Peace and WIWIP King's College London for this very important opportunity and inviting me to share my perspective on Afghanistan's development gains in the agriculture sector, the work of our international partners such as Roots of Peace, and most importantly, how to scale these important gains in the context of the currently ongoing peace discussions. Let me begin by telling you that the war in Afghanistan remains one of the deadliest conflicts in the world, affecting every aspect of life and development. And the ongoing targeting of civilians, particularly women, has led to self-censorship, and it has affected the quality of public engagement and critical debate. So to be alive today and make it to another important conversation on Afghanistan feels like a blessing. Having made my emotional opening, now I would like to say that resilience of the agriculture sector in the face of all odds, from drought to the ongoing war, is worth recognizing. The importance of the agriculture sector in creating national wealth is clearly undisputed, and so is the vastly untapped potential of the sector. Afghans, including myself, we remain grateful to the influx of the development assistance in the past 20 years. But it's also important to recognize that much of this assistance is still consumed by the security sector and the ongoing war. So very often I find myself thinking the wonders that could be achieved if the same development fund could have been channeled into all other sectors, especially our agricultural sector. Now, beyond the agriculture sector's contribution to the country's overall economy, I also would like to bring your attention to a very important dynamic of this sector, which is related to rural employment. Now, with that, I also have to mention here that since the conversation around peace has started, there's a lot of diversion and a lot of conversations and a lot of polarization between the rural and the urban women and dynamics overall. But I just would like to briefly talk a little about the time that I spent at the Ministry of Commerce and a very important realization that I had that includes women in the rural areas and also how inclusive the agriculture sector is in terms of the gender roles. For example, in my village, the women of our family, they are all involved in farming and they all practice farming in some way or another. But much of this contribution remains unpaid female labor, but still that doesn't mean that they are not actively involved. So a lot of the conversations and the polarization of urban and dividing urban and rural women in relation to the peace process have been very surprising for me. Also, there were incidents at the Ministry of Commerce where in some cases, I could see that Afghan women had pioneered agricultural business initiatives in their communities. But once the business had picked up, unfortunately, the man of the family or that community had stepped in and leveraged the credit for themselves. So while we as a country have a long way to go to address these problems and gaps, I think it is the work of organizations like Roots of Peace that continues to close the gaps in the agricultural value chain, and alongside they also empower women entrepreneurs, because from what Heidi clearly explained here, it's pretty obvious that the work that Roots of Peace is trying to do here in Afghanistan has impacted men and women of this country equally, and it's very strong and empowering when such work does impact women entrepreneurs particularly. Now, having said all of that, it's worth mentioning that currently Afghanistan sits at the crossroad of competing visions for a future model of governance. That is not only a matter of a possibility of going back to Taliban's Islamic Emirate, and the likes of which we Afghan women have experienced between 1996 and 2001. But it's also a matter of the future of development assistance and how the work of partners such as Roots of Peace will be shaped in the likelihood of a Taliban takeover of the political structure. What we have been witnessing so far in relation to the peace talks is that there is less of a development conversation or a development-focused peace conversation, but more of a political conversation around the political structure and how the power should be divided among different factions of the war. But it's very crucial that Afghanistan and its international partners at this particular point would acknowledge the importance of how a political structure could shape the future of development assistance, but not only acknowledge, but it's important that we all advocate for a political settlement that helps us maintain the basic principles of a democratic order, and that it will allow us to continue to build on the brilliant work of partners like Roots of Peace. I aspire for the day, as much as I understand that this the vision for Roots of Peace started by eradicating landmines and turning them into farms, but I do aspire for the day that Roots of Peace's brilliant work won't include eradicating landmines in Afghanistan, but they continue to strengthen value chain and facilitate exports. I'll finish it there, and thank you, Cheryl.
Look, Odessa, thank you so much for your passionate remarks with quite an insight for all of us to ponder and digest. And I certainly hope the international community is listening to you and to all of us today. Our next speaker is Zarlesh Sarmast. She is the Global Fellows Program Coordinator for OSUN, which is short for Open Society University Network. She has served as the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Kabul. She is director and CEO of the project Afghanistan Politics on the Verge of Transformation. Zarlesh is working on her master's degree in the field of international relations and human rights at OSCE Academy, which is short for Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Now, Zarlesh is coming to us live from Kyrgyzstan. And I know it's late there, so we appreciate you staying up late for us. Zarlesh, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that introduction. I feel very honored to be joining this panel. I feel like I'm getting a lot of education right now, and I'm getting so much insight from all this group of outstanding women. So thank you very much for having me. I just want to start by saying that I think we're facing a very critical time in Afghanistan right now, considering the peace negotiations, not only in Doha, but in so many different countries, the security situation and everything else that the ordinary Afghans face on a daily basis. And that said, I'm really happy to see and learn about the different efforts done by different groups of local and international organizations for peace building in Afghanistan. The first time I learned about the horrors of landmines in Afghanistan and what it has done to thousands of people in this country, it was back when I was working as the spokesperson and media officer for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Kabul. And as the spokesperson for this organization, the hardest part of my job was to visit the orthopedic center. It was a center which the ICRC created for victims of landmines and the ongoing conflict not only in Kabul, but across Afghanistan. And I met a lot of people there who lost body parts, and that was because of the landmines and the ongoing conflict. And I heard so many stories from each of those stories were really, really heartbreaking. And I recall one of them, which was, I was speaking to two little kids and they just went out for kite flying, and then one of them just stepped on a mine, and you can just imagine what was next. And after that, I was really devastated, and I really wanted to do something. And I decided to start my own project, and even if make a difference, even if it's very small. And I started two projects, well, one project, and then that led to another one. My first project was called Recovering Forgotten Conflicts, or in short, RFC, to tell the stories of people who are like forgotten after something happens. It's on the news and everywhere, and then the people who are actually impacted, they get forgotten and their stories are not shared. And then that led to another project, Afghanistan Politics on the Verge of Transformation. The main aim of the first project was to tell the stories of ordinary Afghans through photographs and get the attention of international organizations that are working and providing humanitarian aid so that they can get the necessary help that they need, whether it's an artificial hand or leg or financial assistance and something like that. And through this project, we have managed to provide assistance to 1,000 plus families and individuals who are impacted by the ongoing war and landmines. The project works in a way that we have photo exhibitions, and if someone is interested to buy a photo, we don't sell the photo. Instead, they have to get in touch with the person in the photo and provide them some help. So the price of each photo is the humanitarian help that this person is providing for the person in the photo. And then my second project, I wanted to make my team bigger and share the story of what I did, because we managed to help a lot of people. So I wanted to either make my team bigger or tell this story and see if I could motivate or inspire other young people to find ways on how they can help and make a small difference. And so this led to creation of Afghanistan Politics on the Verge of Transformation. And this is an annual workshop that takes place every summer in Kabul for students who are studying in the field of international relations. And the workshop focuses on raising awareness about the current economic and political situation in Afghanistan through research and dialogue with the Afghan youth who participate in these workshops. All that said, I want to say that these are just some small steps towards solving such big issues. I think what is more important is the commitment of international community and international organizations like Roots of Peace to Afghanistan and to the people. And I say that because, and I have another short story. I remember back in 2013 when I was still in middle school, I was assisting in the production of a short report about a vineyard in Shamali for Al Jazeera. And while I was there, I learned that that very land on which I was standing was once a mined land. And people couldn't walk there, children couldn't play there. So it was impossible for people living in that district to even think that that same land could be transformed into something so beautiful and an opportunity for so many families to earn money and live better lives. And it was then when I learned about Roots of Peace for the first time and the positive impact this organization has on lives of thousands of Afghan people in Afghanistan. And I realized the importance of the time and the investment of the international community for Afghanistan. And when I was there, I remember I spoke with one of the farmers a little bit more, and he told me how happy he was for having a job that he loved and that he was able to provide better life for his wife and for his children, and that he was able to just buy stationery for his kids or take his wife to the clinic if needed. And just the fact that he was able to have the basic human needs, thanks to his job working in agriculture. So I think this is a very tiny example of the bigger picture I'm trying to give, because I think unemployment leads to many different and dangerous problems, while jobs can sustain families and contribute to the economy of the country. And as Heidi mentioned, Afghanistan is a country that is 80% dependent on agriculture. And that is why it is really, really important to work more on peace through agriculture. And in addition to that, I think that an economically stable Afghanistan would connect the landlocked Central Asian states with the rest of the world and pave the way for better connectivity and economic development. And one way to do this is by funding and empowering local agricultural peace-building initiatives, just like Roots of Peace is doing. And so I think that's all I want to share for now. And I would like to now pass it back to our wonderful moderator.
Zarlesh, what a story. Thank you for doing your part to help your country. And you're doing all of this while you're going to school and working. So we do appreciate that. And all of your volunteer projects as well. Before we hear from our next speaker, we want to show you a short video about the many programs being offered to women and young people in Afghanistan by Roots of Peace. Let's take a look.
Women are a crucial but often unrecognized force in Afghanistan's agricultural economy. While farming is generally a male-dominated occupation, women are involved in virtually all farming activities through their work in households, stables, and gardens. Roots of Peace has made it an important part of its mission to integrate women into all of its program activities. It does this by starting at the household level and training women in how to best provide for the food needs of their families, such as household gardening and poultry raising. We also reach out to widows and other primary breadwinners whose husbands have been lost to war, making sure the knowledge chain isn't broken by including them in our farmer field school programs. We also include women in programs aimed at converting unproductive fields into high-valued orchards and vineyards. providing them with saplings and related training. Roots of Peace also designs programs that allow women to create a secondary income stream at home. By producing beyond their family's needs, our women trainees are able to sell the surplus of their goods in the local market. Our apricot sulfur drying training enables women to add value to fresh crops and sell them later when prices are higher. Jam and jelly processing classes give Afghan women the tools needed to start their own household business, with courses in food safety, hygiene, and packaging for those wishing to take their new business to the next level. Beyond the farm level, we work with women in the Afghan agribusiness sector to make sure that they have the training that will enable them to succeed on a level playing field with men. We train them in business management and accounting skills. We help women exporters gain access to loans and trade credit. As their businesses grow and they're ready to compete on the international marketplace, we support them at overseas trade shows where they are able to exhibit their goods for buyers from North and South America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Through our USAID-funded grants program, we provided machinery grants valued at more than $100,000 to women exporters. This has allowed them to own the most up-to-date machinery for processing, cleaning, and sorting their fruits and nuts at international standards. In our 2 decades of working with women, Roots of Peace has partnered with donors such as USAID, the United Nations Development Program, and the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs to bring Afghan women from the level of subsistence farmers to sophisticated food exporters. These women are now serious entrepreneurs at the top of their game, who provide jobs for other women and bring recognition to the entire Afghan horticultural sector.
Big thank you to actress Diane Baker for voicing that report. She has traveled with Roots of Peace as well to Afghanistan, and for Will Everett with Roots of Peace for producing the report. Our next speaker knows this gender program extremely well. Fawzia Behruz Mirzai is an agribusiness specialist working with women and young people in Afghanistan. She is the director for the Roots of Peace Women's Gender Program, and she helps women and young people establish their own businesses and generate a sustainable income. She is so passionate about the role that women will play in Afghanistan's future. She has been inspired by the personal changes she has seen in women in education and agriculture in Afghanistan during her young lifetime. Fawzia, welcome. Thank you for being with us live from Kabul.
In the name of Almighty Allah, thanks, Cheryl, for this kind introduction. Indeed, it gives me immense pleasure that I'm talking on behalf of women in agriculture in this awesome program. And a very warm greetings to everyone from Kabul. And everyone know that about 14.2 million of Afghanistan's population people are female. The past and present war in Afghanistan has been affected the lives of million people in Afghanistan, especially women. We know that Afghanistan women have been caught in attacks in many sites, in several sites. They have been victimized at home, they have restricted by conservative laws, and they have traumatized by bombings, and they have lost, unfortunately, their children, husbands, and families during the war in Afghanistan. In a country which racked by decades of war and dearth of resources, the women's stories shows that how much women in Afghanistan have struggled and obstacles in their life. The Roots of Peace project aim is to contribute toward the reduction of unemployment in Afghanistan. And we are working with women and youth in Afghanistan in order to make them empower and make them a valuable asset in agriculture and agribusiness sector. And we know that today women make up almost half of the agricultural workforce, but unfortunately they have been marginalized. Their contribution in agriculture is in a very high rate, but unfortunately nowadays they didn't receive pay and reward in their contribution that they have in agriculture. We know that women in Afghanistan are agents of change in their communities and households. And let me tell you a short story from Roots of Peace client that we're really proud of her. Yes, I'm talking about one of our clients by the name of Marzia. She's the owner of Nikon Sauda Trading Company in Kabul. She got an idea from other women traders in Kabul. She inspired and she got impressed by other traders in Afghanistan to start her own business. Now she's doing her own business, and Roots of Peace supported this business in terms of soft skill, and we provided her a mentorship program. The 2 months mentorship program helped Marzia to learn the fundamental business skills about how to grow the business, how to supply the products, how to find the buyers, how to deal with the buyers, and how to run the business in proper manner. So we're really proud of her, and the business is growing day by day, and she's going to attend as an exhibitor in upcoming trade show in India. That she's really happy from Roots of Peace that we provide this support for her. And we know ROP allow women to earn their own money and achieve a financial independence. So I'm really happy working with this organization. And women participation, you know, that in Afghanistan, women participation in labor market is very low, which is a big challenge. And Roots of Peace is working with these women and youth in order to increase their access to higher value markets, especially agricultural markets, that they are working in agribusiness sector. And Roots of Peace gives special attention to women and youth in rural and urban areas. We are providing them technical and financial support in order to make them empowered. And also we want to make them a valuable asset in this sector. And the gender program activities hold a great potential to ensure and develop dynamic impact in Afghanistan women in agribusiness sector. So being a part of this organization, I'm really happy to work with Roots of Peace. And I'm really grateful from Heidi, from Tim, from Ahmed Shah, and entire team in Roots of Peace that they are doing their will to contribute job employment and to help Afghanistan women to make them empowered. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your attention.
Fauzia, thank you so much for your remarks. We appreciate your time and all your hard work with these programs. I know that everybody here has said that it's very dangerous work, and Mukaddesa, you said it's a blessing to have every day here, and our hearts go out to you because of that. We have time for a question for our guests. Let's go back to our host, Charlotte Harwood with King's College London, the Women in War and International Politics. Charlotte, what's your question for everybody?
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you to our speakers for their inspiring stories. I just can't believe what I'm hearing. It's so amazing to hear your experiences. So my question is, what do you see as the greatest challenge for women in Afghanistan going forward? And what can the international community do to support you overcome this challenge? And I think we'll start with Mukaddesa for this one.
Thank you, Charlie. I've been sitting here and listening to both Zarlash and Fauzia, and it's very heartwarming to listen to them and the work that they have been doing. That's a very good question, Charlie. The most immediate challenge as we speak is the environment of fear and intimidation that is created by the recent wave of rise in violence, and particularly targeted killings that are directed towards women professionals, media workers, human rights defenders, and civil society activists. So when I said earlier that we take every day as it comes, and it's a blessing to be involved in another conversation concerning Afghanistan, it truly is a blessing. Because as the peace talks are progressing, there's a widespread fear amongst Afghan women that we will be excluded from the important discussions and decisions about the future of our country and our own future. So I would say that the most immediate challenge that we as Afghan women are facing right now is actually an existential threat to our existence. And given what we have experienced during the Taliban regime between 1995 to 2001, there is a widespread fear that we might go back to that if Afghan women are not given the opportunity to be present in these conversations and these important decision making that we foresee coming up in the near future. In the past decade or two, Afghan women have constantly mobilized, pushed all sorts of boundaries to ensure their participation in all areas, from education to politics to developments. And I say this with guarantee that each one of us sitting here, from Fawzia to Zarlash to I, it hasn't been easy for us to stand where we stand. To emerge as a professional woman in this country, it just doesn't happen overnight. It is not natural. It takes a nature of force and a constant pushing of boundaries at multiple levels to be where we are today. And I say this because I have had the opportunity to be a student in India, to be a student in the US, and benefit from those educational opportunities. I have been around other women from other countries who have taken their existence for granted. But unfortunately for us, for women of Afghanistan, there's a whole existential threat to our existence in the first place. Now, since Charlie, you asked that what we can do, I would like to say that we women, on a daily basis, we try to mobilize, we try to advocate, we are trying to, despite the self-censorship efforts or the efforts to restrict our movements and our voices, we are constantly mobilizing to make sure that the world understands the immediate challenge that we are facing. So we are trying to do our part, but it's equally important that our international partners also take a stock of what's happening here and also the potential threat to the future of Afghan women. Our international partners have a lot of political leverage, both with the Taliban and also the region and all other important international stakeholders. So I think it's very important that we first take a stock of what is it that's threatening us. The stock of the fact that the Taliban have not changed. They are already trying to, without even being here, they're trying to restrict our movement and our voices. And also it's important that they use their political leverage to make sure that any form of future governance in Afghanistan is going to make sure that the basic rights of women is granted to them. And I'm pretty sure my colleagues here have other points to add, but I think that's overall what I can say is our immediate demand and attention from the international community.
Mukadesa, thank you so much. I want to pose that same question to Zarlash. Your thoughts on that, please.
Thank you so much. I think I completely agree with what Ms. Mukadesa just mentioned about this recent raise of tension among young people considering the target killings. I was traumatized last year. It was in June 11th. I was still in Bishkek. I was not back when I heard the news about my best friend who was one of the victims of target killings. She was a dear friend, and she graduated from the same university that I graduated from, American University of Central Asia, and she just started working for the Human Rights Commission, Independent Human Rights Commission in Afghanistan. And one morning when she was going to work, they put a magnetic bomb in her car, and she was murdered, just like that. And that morning, I woke up, and the first thing I saw everywhere on my Instagram stories and everything else was her pictures and RIP, and I couldn't believe it. And from that time until now, I completely understand what Ms. Mukadesa is talking about when she's speaking about the tension among the young people in just the existence of women and how hard it is to be a woman and live in Afghanistan. And I think I didn't know this in the past, but the more I grow up and the more I realize the society and see the news and just what happens around me when I'm in Afghanistan, the more fearful I get and stressful I get. So that's one. And in addition to what Ms. Muqaddasa mentioned, I want to say that even though a lot of work has been done, both by the international community and the Afghan government to some extent, education, illiteracy, and security, security, education, and illiteracy, I think tops the list of challenges for women in Afghanistan moving forward. And I think lack of education and lack of quality education leads to another bigger challenge, which is unemployment and financial issues. And I think what I'm trying to say is that in many ways, things still remain extremely difficult for women and for girls. While some things are better, a lot of the old problems persist and new problems have presented themselves. And these problems are interconnected and have mutual effect on each other. And this makes lasting solutions even more difficult. And I say that because I grew up in Afghanistan, and given the current social, political, and cultural, economical, and traditional situation in Afghanistan, I think these are a variety of factors that can worsen this problem. And I also agree with what Ms. Muqaddasa mentioned about the commitment of international community in Afghanistan. I think even now, when women are talking about how they don't want to go back, there is this movement of and even the hashtag of we don't want to go back and Afghan women are not going back. I think it has a lot to do with how much awareness was raised by the international community. And so the commitment of international community and their investment more towards education and security would be, I think, some points that can add to the solution.
All right, Zarlesh, thank you so much. Fawzia, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. You're on the ground, you're out in the rural areas working with the women. We know that being at home would not have been a good thing for you to do this broadcast for us today. You're in a safe place. So can you talk about your thoughts on the greatest challenge for women in Afghanistan? We've touched on a lot of it, but there's so much more.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yes, I do agree with what Muqaddasa and Zarlesh just mentioned about the challenge that the greatest challenge that women in Afghanistan have recently. And I can, in terms of agriculture, I can say, because I'm an agriculture expert, so it's better to mention about the problems and challenge that we have in agriculture sector or agribusiness sector. The main challenge that women in Afghanistan have in agriculture sector are, despite having security challenge and all these, they have challenge on lack of education, as Zarlesh said, and they don't have land ownership. This is the main problem in Afghanistan, that the women, they don't have any land ownership. They don't have capital working. So whenever they want to start any business, so they don't have capital working. They don't have the right to start their own business. However, the assessed or the investment is from the woman trader, but still some obstacle is against her that she can't do in proper way. But hopefully we will sort it out by the time being. And security, as Zarlesh and Muqaddas said, that yes, security problem is the main challenge that we have. Yes, myself, even when I'm going to office, so I saw about 3 explosion, which I was 300 meters away from that explosion. It happened in our street. So, that it affect in my mental and affect in my mind. So I can't do my works in proper way. But still, I'm working in Afghanistan because I want to work with Afghan women. So, we can overcome with these problems if we provide education facilities for Afghan women, if we provide social facilities and financial facilities for these women, then we can come up with a great solution. And The best thing is, as I said earlier, that women participation in labor market is very low, which is a big challenge that we see. But the project can work with these startups, these business, in order to support them, empower them, and to help them to make them eligible for to be an exporter in the future, in coming years. So we can help these startups, these businesses to run their business in proper way and to penetrate to international market to get a nice revenue in the future. So we can help these women through these programs and projects implementing partners can work on these in order to help and support women. And fortunately, Roots of Peace working with Afghan women and youth, and we are trying to allow women in Afghanistan to earn their own money from their own pocket, and have and achieve financial independence, which is very important in Afghanistan in order to make them empowered. Thank you.
Alzia, thank you so much. My head is spinning listening to all of these powerful stories, and clearly the need for international support that should continue. We want to move back to Heidi Kuhn, her team is working in Afghanistan with you, Ms. Fauzia. And as the founder and CEO of Roots of Peace, you've had not only the security challenges, but you also had COVID-19 to deal with at home and in Afghanistan. Heidi, what has that been like for Roots of Peace?
Well, COVID-19 has been a challenge to the whole world. And our greatest challenge when it really hit last year and into the fall harvest, our responsibility was getting those fresh fruits to new markets. And when people were shelter in place, we had to be very creative about doing that. Now, fortunately, in 2018, with funding from USAID CHAMP program, we established the first ever cold storage refrigeration at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. And the fresh fruits could be, properly packed and then flown to new markets on a regular basis. But that's not enough because, again, Afghanistan is a country 80% dependent upon agriculture, and there were more fruits that could possibly fill the cargo planes. So we had to keep those fresh fruits going across contentious borders and through Pakistan into India. And Roots of Peace proudly, we build bridges, and we're humanitarian, not political. And so we reached out to Ambassador Sadek, who is involved in the peace talks, the inter-Afghan peace talks. He is the former ambassador of Pakistan to Afghanistan. So he knew the challenges that we had, and we were able to really work together, listening to one another and bridging those borders through the Torkham Pass and really getting those trucks, and if those fruits perish, like they have in 2 or 3 days in a container going to market, it ruins the livelihoods of the farmers. So that was really our greatest challenge last year. But of course, COVID-19 has not gone away. And this spring, Roots of Peace and our partnership with both USAID and INL have been able to procure over 700,000 sapling trees, and those will be planted in the most remote markets. And I say remote because these are strongholds for the Taliban. We work in Kandahar and Helmand and Bagis, Farah, Nangarhar. But if those are listening on all sides, the Taliban wants their children fed. They don't want their children stepping on landmines. And so I think if we can go forward in the peace talks yet to come in Istanbul, Turkey, I think it would be so critical right now at such a window to get the conversation of the importance of agribusiness, the importance of development on the table. It's not a male-female thing. It's about feeding our families, our children, creating income and a better future for Afghanistan. That is our mission, and that is how we plant the roots of peace in Afghanistan.
Heidi, thank you for those remarks. We are at the 1 hour mark, but we are going to extend our broadcast for a few more minutes because we have so many questions from our audience, and because we have a rare opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with the situation in Afghanistan. So we thank you if you can stay with us just a few more minutes. Muqaddas, I have a question for you. This says, what should the Afghan government do to ensure access to credit for women-owned agribusinesses? Mukadesa? You have to unmute, please.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's a very challenging question to respond to, because unfortunately, despite all the parallel efforts that have been going on, I think Roots of Peace is one example, a great example of what our international partners have been trying to do in doing their part. I think the Afghan government, unfortunately, haven't been doing much in terms, or at least haven't been doing what is actually expected from them, which clearly is more than what they're trying to deliver right now. I think the question of access to credit also comes back to the way the Afghan government actually, the overall financial and banking system of Afghanistan, and the way the policies that the Afghan government have been trying to put down for the banking system of Afghanistan. And for major part, unfortunately, most of these policies are formulated with a lens that completely excludes women entrepreneurs and women businesses. We're a male-dominated society, and for a major part, we have seen an increase of senior women officials in the decision-making processes, but when women are not present on those important decision-making tables, I think it's very clear that the decisions that are being, the policy decisions that are being formulated does exclude women businesses. And when it comes to, so going back again, when it comes to access to credit, there are a lot of prerequisites, basically, that in the broader policy space that does not only include the that does not only has to do with the banking regulation, but it's also the access to the access to land, for example, the rights of access to land, that in return has to do with a lot of the policies that are being formulated at the Supreme Court and at the justice space. So I think everything is very interconnected, and unfortunately, the government hasn't been doing much.
All right, Mukadesa, thank you.
Can you hear me, Cheryl?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I lost I lost the sound.
Did you want to finish your thought?
Yes. Yeah.
Please go ahead. Okay, it seems as though we have a little bit of a difficulty hearing Mukadesa right now. So I want to direct a question to Fauzia right now. And the question, Fauzi, is we've been talking about the security, and also you've been talking about the success of Roots of Peace. So the question is, would more international funding help women and youth in your program, given the security issues? And does anyone try to stop you? Fauzia.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Cheryl, for this nice question. Actually, yeah, funding more on agribusiness sector will help women and youth to make them empowered. And we are trying to make them a valuable asset in this sector. As I said earlier, that we have many challenges in agriculture sector, including land ownership, that majority of the women in Afghanistan, they don't have the land ownership, which is the biggest challenge that nowadays female farmers face. More funding will help women to have their own income, their own revenue, and to help their home and their economic situation, and to help to have a better life, to help them to like enter their children in good schools, to have good education, good future for their children. Yes, indeed.
And does anyone try to stop your work there?
no one, as of now, no one did. But still, I fear that maybe some challenge will stop me from my work. But I don't want to stop at all. I want to work more and more for Afghan women because I'm living for Afghan women. And you know that the USAID project provided me this an opportunity for my MBA degree. And when I work in 2017, I think, yeah, it was in 2017 that I work in Roots of Peace in Balkh province. On the Roots of Peace only give me this idea that I work on agribusiness sector. So when I pass on my MBA, so I select the agribusiness, international agribusiness specialization. So then I complete my education in this specialization, and now I'm working in this sector as a agribusiness specialist for women and youth empowerment. So I'm really happy from Roots of Peace, and thank you, Roots of Peace, for their awesome project, unemployment in Afghanistan.
Fausia, thank you so much. I believe we have reestablished a connection with Mukaddesa. We wanted to go back to you and finish your thought, please. But you'll have to unmute.
Yes, sorry, I think for some reason my connection was not very stable. Yes, so I think all I was saying was that basically the problem of access to credit is not a problem in itself, but I think it is a result of couple of factors that come together in a society like Afghanistan, and then does lead to the problems of access to credit and financing for women. And I think what the government could do is actually it is to address those pre-existing problems or the prerequisites that are required to then help women gain access to credit. But I just would like to mention an example of a subsidy program that the government supported, which probably was not necessarily a direct access to credit program for women, but it was a program that subsidized part of the cost that women would occur or incur when trying to access an international market. So I think if in terms of like immediate solutions that could help women quickly gain access to certain markets or try to improve the gaps in their value chain and the business value chain, is this government subsidiary programs that I think would potentially until the time that we figure out all of the policies that are related to the banking and financial system of Afghanistan, and then the ownership of capital, the problems of ownership of capital for women. I think the government subsidized programs have been helpful. And from what I understand, there is also a specific procurement exceptions for women businesses when trying to apply or bid for certain trade-related programs. I think those are the two examples that I can think of what the Afghan government has tried to do to help women businesses gain access to market, but not much in terms of what they have done in particular to help women gain access to credit.
Mukaddesa, thank you. I'm so glad we were able to reconnect with you. I appreciate that. Our next question from our international audience is to Zardasht. How does the unrest, we've touched on this a little bit, how does the unrest in Afghanistan impact women's efforts to fight for their rights? Zardasht.
I think it's again a challenging question, but I think it just kills their motivation when they see, how hard we try to reach somewhere. And I've lived in Afghanistan. I grew up in Afghanistan, so I've worked with different local and international organizations. When you do something and when you are trying very hard and trying to make a lot of efforts, and it doesn't just reach somewhere, and you face all these several challenges from education, not having access to education, that creates another problem for you to have a good job because you didn't have a good education, and many other problems like this. I think in short, in one sentence, I would say it demotivates women in Afghanistan to work harder and to move forward. And yeah, I think that's what I would say for this.
All right, Janesh, thank you so much. All right, we have a question from our friends in India. This is for Heidi Kuhn. With the lockdown across borders, will Roots of Peace be open to convert the fresh fruits into powder form so they can be preserved to prevent loss of fruits due to decay? Heidi?
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, we are working on innovative methods to preserve the beautiful fruits from Afghanistan. We have the dried fruits, we have the nuts, and many of these are women-owned. Benazir Yakhta, and many of you know her, she's part of our USAID CHAMP program. And we are looking for ways, even with the pomegranate, to distill that down into a concentrate and bring innovative ways to get these beautiful fruits. And I'm sure that'll be a new project for our women in Afghanistan as well, to take note of the need for the powdered and dried fruits to even, accelerate into Afghanistan. And I just would like to say also, I so deeply appreciate Afghanistan. For the past nearly 20 years as CEO, I've worked with thousands of men and women and signed their paycheck. And I think the men have seen that as with respect, because we're helping to feed their families. And I've worked with His Excellency Minister Durrani, Minister Rahimi, Minister Ahadi. These are all the ministers of MAIL, which is the Ministry of Agriculture. And I have a business model to put myself out of business so that in the next several years, we transfer that knowledge to the Afghan people, and they will be on their own to get fresh fruits and dried fruits and powdered fruits and nuts and restore Afghanistan as the Garden of Central Asia.
Heidi, thanks very much. Well, we are at the point in the show where I'm going to ask each of our speakers for their final thoughts for about a couple of minutes. And let's begin with Mukaddesa, please.
Thank you, Cheryl. It has been very heartwarming to be present here in this conversation. It's when you're living here in the middle of a war and crisis on a daily basis and a shadow of death, leaning upon you, it's very difficult to maintain perspective. I think it's very difficult to maintain your motivation to do what you're doing on a daily basis. But I think it's conversations like this, and also meeting people like Zarlasht and Fauzia, that I feel like I'm a little senior to them, that gives you the hope to keep up. I think it is exhausting. What Zarlasht said, that it's exhausting when you try to stay and be productive and try to act as everything is normal with what we are experiencing on a daily basis. But honestly, it's this new generation of women. I think they are more, Zarlasht, you guys are different. You guys are fierce. You guys bring something different than us on the table. I mean, I always say this, that I do walk on the path that has been provided for me by the other woman who came before me, and it's equally true what we have done, to the generation that are younger than us. But I mean, the last generation, I think, for that matter, Fauzia's generation, I think these women are fearless. These women bring a totally different perspective, and I think it's all of us together who continue to give each other hope. And I'm very happy that I could be part of this conversation. And equally, Heidi, I think what you are doing here is just amazing. And I'm really happy that I could be part of this conversation to learn more about the brilliant work that Roots of Peace is doing. And I hope that you continue to do that, because it's very important what you're trying to achieve here. I think that's all from my side.
But before you go, Mukaddesa, I have to tell you, I'm reading some of the chat comments coming in. And do you know a man named Arnie Arnthorson? Yes, he's your teacher. He was a teacher. Hired you to teach at AUAF.
I see. Yeah.
Yes, he said it's the one who hired Mukaddesa to teach I will say that women like her and the rest of the women on this panel are an inspiration to our female students. So I just had to share that with you. We're getting lots.
Yeah, I do remember Arnie. Yeah, Arnie, if you're watching.
He is watching. So thank you, Arnie. Thank you, Mukadesa. All right, Zarlesh, I know we all hate to wrap this up, but we have to. So Zarlesh, would you please give us some of your final thoughts in just a couple of minutes, please? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much again for having me in this panel. I feel very motivated, and I was hopeful, but I think I'm more hopeful. And I second what Ms. Mukadesa mentioned about panels like this and discussions like this and being involved in forums like this, because it just lifts your spirit up again and gives you that motivation to continue and gives you the feeling that your work really matters and that there are people who have the same idea as you do. And I feel very hopeful. I think learning more about Roots of Peace, I first learned about Roots of Peace when I was so young, and now that getting all this detailed information about how much of a big impact they had in Afghanistan, in particular for women, just gives me so much hope to finish my MA and then go back there as soon as possible and see what more I can do to help. And I also want to say thank you to Ms. Mukadesa, because I think she mentioned this, but I also want to say that I think if it wasn't for women like you and others who took those first steps and paved the way for the younger generation, none of this would have been possible. And so one of the reasons we are fierce is because we look up to women like you, and you guys inspire us. So thank you very much for being there, and thank you for doing what you do. Thank you, Heidi, for doing what you do, and thank you, Fauzia, and thank you, everyone. This has been amazing.
Yes, I just love all of your remarks. All right, before we wrap, we want to hear from Ms. Fauzia. Your final thoughts in a couple of minutes, please. You have to unmute. Unmute, Fauzia. Sorry, unmute. The world of Zoom, right? We have to remind people to unmute themselves. So if someone's helping Fauzia, looks like
Hello.
she's unmuted.
Thank you,
Please go
Cheryl.
ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was unmute. It was mute. Thank you, Cheryl, and thanks for giving me this nice opportunity to ladies. And I have met Mukadesa in Pune when I was during my MBA. She was one of the ICCR alumni, and I listened to her speech during that program. It was very impressive for me. And I would like to say that Afghanistan women are not economic beneficiaries. Afghanistan women are economic actors. In order to empower a community, we need to empower women initially, which is very important. Thank you, everyone, for giving this opportunity. And again, I'm really proud of working with Roots of Peace, with such awesome and incredible team, the Home Office and Afghanistan team, and I'm really happy. And thanks from my family who let me to continue my education, because I'm from a very restricted family, Pashtuns. So I'm really happy that I'm doing I'm working with the Afghan women to empower them. Thank you so much.
Fauzia, thank you. All right, Ms. Heidi, let's go to you for your final thoughts, please.
Well, my final thoughts, I just would like to thank everyone. You've inspired my day here in California, that's for sure, because we have times where we wonder whether we are making a difference. And Cheryl Jennings, you have joined us as the #1 news anchor in San Francisco for over 30 years, 9 Emmy Awards. And I just want to give a shout out to that, because you went not only with me and my daughter Kylie in 2005 to walk the minefields on the front line of the Shamali Plains. And then you came back in 2015. And I think it's significant in the fact that that was a year, I think this is common knowledge, that Roots of Peace was attacked by the Taliban in a 4.5-hour gun battle on March 28th, 2014. And that was a very defining moment for me as CEO, whether it just got too dangerous to do a job, a nonprofit job in Afghanistan. And it was through your encouragement and the encouragement of many other incredible women in my life who said, keep going. And to see those numbers go from 250 million in ag exports to over 1.4 billion dollars, with wonderful women who are at the helm of USAID and the US Department of State and the women of Afghanistan. I think we really have to go forth in a spirit of forgiveness. And I think forgiving is the hardest thing to do in the world. But as we go forward with potentially a new government and the Afghan peace talks, again, when the ink is dried, we are a humanitarian organization. We will lead with shovels and not guns. And through the compassion of women, I think really can help to heal those very deep cuts and those wounds of war, and to communicate across the board to all parties who are at the table in Istanbul, Turkey, that we need to include development as a crucial and critical part of these peace talks. For peace can only happen when we dig from swords to plowshares from the bottom up. So Tashakur to everyone, and especially to you, Charlie, for convening this. It's not often that a war college, Department of War Studies, would be talking about something like roots of peace. But as General John F. Campbell said, it's the most important thing that military forces and market forces work together to deeply plant the roots of peace in Afghanistan now. Thank you, Cheryl, Tashakur, to all the lovely women. And I hope there's many more panels and intelligent discussions like this can go viral through Cheryl Cam Media. So thank you so much.
Heidi, thank you. All right, I'm going to toss this back to Charlotte Harwood because we are out of time. Charlotte, go ahead.
Thank you, Cheryl. On behalf of Women in War and International Politics, I would just like to extend my most gracious thanks to our speakers for sharing their stories and the thought-provoking discussion that we have had, in the evening here in the UK. It's just been so inspiring to hear about the role that women have played in Afghanistan, the progress that's been made, and also what more there is to be done in the future. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to Cheryl for moderating this event. You have really facilitated its smooth progress, so thank you very much. It truly has been a great pleasure to see this event come to life, and thank you to everyone who is attending right now, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Charlotte, thank you so much for hosting this event and making it all possible. Now, we know that a lot of people in our audience have questions, so you can send those questions to Heidi at Roots of Peace, and she promises to either herself or her team will answer those questions, every single one of them. So there you go, Heidi, it's on you now. Heidi at rootsofpeace.org. Many, many thanks to our production company, ARC8 Productions. This program is going to be posted by them on the Roots of Peace YouTube channel later today. So we encourage you to share it on your social media because we really want to get the word out around the world about what's going on in Afghanistan and how the world needs to play a role in this and helping lift women, children, and families out of this situation. You can find links to King's College London, the WIWIP program, and Roots of Peace on the Roots of Peace website, rootsofpeace.org. So thank you so much for joining our International Forum on Cultivating Peace through Agriculture in Afghanistan. Appreciate your time. Thank you.